So you are welcome once again to Genetics series. We continue in a look at some aspect of genetics as it applies to animals, although we'll be taking some examples from crops as the case may be. So let me remind you once again to subscribe to the channel, like, share a comment, and share with a friend. Today we'll be looking at Module 5, and we are concerned with selection and the terms that are commonly used in selection. So come along then. So what is selection? Selection is simply a tool used by geneticists in the improvement of animals. And selection simply means the choosing of animals that will become parents of the next generation. And this selection is made possible by what is referred to as variation, which exists among animals and plants also. And these variations are noticed in the character or traits of choice or of interest that the breeder is interested in improving. So to carry out selection, usually animals are ranked based on their phenotypic value. And then the best animal is selected while the rest are usually caught. The phenotypic value is the measurable attributes that we measure in the animals, such as number of eggs laid, body weight gain, and so on and so forth. So the value we attach to those traits is what is referred to as the phenotypic value. So animals that are selected are expected to possess desirable genes for the characters of choice, and that because they've been selected, these desirable genes can be passed on to the next generation. So we want to look at some terms that are used in selection. There are some common terms that we use in describing some of the measures that we take or we use in selecting animals. So the first one we have is known as selection pressure. And this is defined simply as the proportion of animals that are rejected during the selection process. In other words, selection pressure is felt by the number of animals that are rejected during the selection process. Represented by the letter capital R, selection pressure is felt more by male animals, and this is because fewer number of males are usually required in a breeding herd or flock compared to their female counterparts. And selection pressure depends on these factors: the number of animals that are available for selection, the number of animals that need to be selected, the sex of the animal concerned, the reproductive rate of the animal, and the selection goal. The selection goal is simply the reason or the reasons for carrying out the selection. So selection pressure can be calculated. So let's take an example from this, that in a herd of cattle, it consists of 100 bulls. Only 40 are required for breeding purposes. So what is the selection pressure? So the selection pressure is calculated simply by subtracting the number of bulls required for future breeding programs from the total number and dividing it by the total number of cattle that's in the herd. So if you do that, you see we have 100 minus 40 divided by 100, and this will give us a selection pressure of 0.6. So this means that about 60% of the animals, of the bulls in the herd of cattle, will be removed as a result of selection pressure. We also have what is known as selection differential, and is presented by the capital letter S. And this is defined as the difference between the mean performance of selected animals, that is the parents to be, and the mean performance of all the potential parents from the population from which they were selected. So the formula is simply selection differential. This is the mean of the selected individuals that we use for future breeding purposes, and this is the mean of the entire population. So let's also try to calculate this. So we're assuming that in a population of animals having a mean of 2.5 kilogram, then if the mean of those individuals selected for the population is 2.8 kilogram, then what is the selection differential? This is straightforward. You apply to the formula, you say that 2.8 minus 2.5 will give us 0.3 kilogram. So the selection differential is 0.3 kilogram. So this selection differential can be standardized, and when it is done, it is known as selection intensity or standardized selection differential. So this is defined, it is represented by the small letter I, and it is defined as the selection differential when it is expressed in standard deviation. So let us also calculate the selection intensity. So it's calculated as selection differential divided by the standard deviation of the entire population from which the parents, the next generation, are selected. In formula form, you see that I is delta S, which is selection differential, and divided by the standard deviation of the population from which they are selected from. That will give us the selection intensity. Okay. So let's consider the previous example. Let's assume that the standard deviation of that population is 1.86. So to estimate the selection intensity, recall that from the previous example, the selection differential was 0.3 kilogram. So if we equate this to the selection, the standard deviation for the population, that would mean that selection intensity is equal to 0.3 divided by 1.86, and that will give us a value of 0.16. It should be noted that the selection intensity tends to increase as the proportion selected is reduced. So there's an inverse relationship between the selection intensity and the proportion of animals that is selected. So this is a table of selection intensity, what is expected. This is the proportion of animals for breeding, and then this is the intensity. You see that as the intensity increases, the proportion of animals for breeding also decreases. So signifying that inverse relationship. So selection response or selection gain. Now this is defined as the expected rate of genetic change, or what we may call genetic progress, resulting from the selection process. It is the expected rate of genetic change which occurs as a result of the selection process. It is calculated using this formula, delta G, that is change in gain or response, is given by PS, bar PS minus bar P, where bar PS is the mean population of the progeny or selected individuals, and bar P is the mean population, mean performance, the mean performance of the population from which the parents were selected. So bar PS is the mean performance of the progeny of selected individuals, and bar P is the mean performance of the population from which the animals were selected from. So the effectiveness of selection is measured by the rate of genetic change that is achieved. When there's a great genetic change as a result of selection, we say that the selection process is highly effective. So we want to assume that the average daily weight gain of the progeny of selected dairy bulls is 0.6 kilogram, and the mean of the entire herd is 0.45 kilogram. What is the response of the gain as a result of selection? So from the formula delta G, we mean that 0.6 minus 0.45 will give us 0.15 kilogram per day. That is the selection response or the selection gain. So we can also predict this response or gain using this formula, where delta G is given as S small h squared. The small h squared is the heritability estimate of the trait of interest, and S is the selection differential. So from our previous example, let's now predict the selection response if the average 18 months body weight of cattle in a herd is 300 kilograms, and the body weight of the selected parents is 330 kilograms, and the estimated heritability for body weight at 18 months is 0.5, which is quite high. So first we have to calculate the selection differential using this formula, and when we do that, it's the mean performance of the selected parents subtracting the herd average will give us a value of 30 kilograms. So if we now multiply this together with the heritability of the trait, it will give us a value of 15 kilograms. The implication is that the expected offspring average body weight of cattle at 18 months post-selection is 300, which is the herd average, plus the 15 kilogram because of the influence of heritability. And when you do that, you get 315 kilogram, which means that we expect a 15 kilogram gain over the base population as a result of carrying out the selection process. Now, selection response or gain can also be corrected to the year or the generation interval. In that case, the formula becomes delta G is equals to delta S H squared divided by GI, where GI is the generation interval. So let's suppose that in the last worked example, the generation interval of cattle was observed to be 4 years. So it means that 15 kilogram, which is what you get from this, when you divide it by 4, you have a 3.75. That is, per year, you expect a 3.75 kilogram gain in the progenies of the selected cattle, which is quite high. So depending on what you want to do, you can apply any of these terms in calculating the expected gain in your selection process. Generation interval. This is just the interval or the amount of time required to replace one generation with the next one. You can also look at it more practically as the average age of the parents when their offspring is born. The average age of the parents when their offspring is born. There's an inverse relationship between generation interval and genetic change. So as the generation interval increases, the rate of genetic change is reduced. This means that if it's going to take animals a long time to attain sexual maturity and then start reproducing, then the rate of genetic change is going to be low, because it's going to take a longer time for the animals to mature, and then genetic change is highly compromised. minimize as a result. What we have here are the average generation intervals of selected farm animals, both the male and the female. In cattle, male, female; in sheep and goat, male, female; in swine, male, female; in the horse, male and female; in the chicken. So see that with the exception of horse and chicken, most other species, the male animal tend to become mature earlier than the female. So we come to the end of terms that are commonly used in selection. So when you carry out selection process in your farm, you can use any of these terms to calculate what is the expected rate of gain. You can also use them, for example, selection pressure, to estimate the pressure that will be mounted on the males that need to be removed from the farm, and so on and so forth. We'll continue in our next module by looking at the different ways of carrying out selection in farm animals. Meanwhile, don't forget to like the channel, subscribe, give a comment, and share with your friends. I'll see you on the